Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor. It is vital for this Council to remain seized of the dire situation in Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates welcomes the renewal of the Sudan sanctions regime. However, I am compelled to participate in this meeting to respond to the baseless allegations made earlier this morning by the Sudanese representative who, as we all know, represents one of the warring parties, whose legitimacy to represent the people of Sudan is questionable, to say the least. His claims are utterly false and are a cynical attempt to deflect attention from the failings of the Sudanese armed forces. Despite the immensely high stakes, the SAF has shown zero political courage. The warring parties have caused this catastrophe, and only they can end it. The Sudanese representative, and through him, the SAF, should be asked, how can you claim you want peace for your people when you have repeatedly refused to come to the negotiating table? How can you justify using starvation as a weapon of war? How can you claim to be a credible and responsible representative of the Sudanese people when you won't heed their calls to end this war? Colleagues, to end this conflict, the SAF must take the vital step of participating in the peace talks and summon the political courage to negotiate with their enemy. For the sake of the Sudanese people, the warring parties must demonstrate strength, not by waging war, but by ending it. Mr. President, the UAE repeats its consistent and increasingly urgent call for the SAF and the RSF to silence the guns, to allow unhindered and sustained humanitarian access, and ultimately to recommit to a transition to a civilian-led government. There must be accountability for the serious violations of international humanitarian law that have been committed. The SAF leadership gives excuse after excuse as to why it refuses to participate in the peace talks. This stance reflects its own internal divisions over how this conflict should end. The Sudanese representative is recycling disproven allegations in an effort to distract this Council and references articles which have been fed by their lies. The repetition of baseless allegations does not make them true, whether repeated in the media, in this Council, or elsewhere. There is simply no credible evidence. These ludicrous accusations have been dispelled in our letters to the Security Council on this matter. This attempt to drive a wedge between our two nations will not succeed. The UAE will remain a strong partner to the Sudanese people, with whom we share a historic bond. In fact, more than 200,000 Sudanese citizens call the UAE their home. We share their pain for what is happening to their country and compatriots. Over the past decade, the UAE has given more than $3.5 billion in aid to Sudan, and since the start of this conflict, we have provided $230 million in humanitarian assistance. And we will continue to advocate for what the Sudanese people demand, which is an end to this conflict and a return to a civilian-led government. And we will call for the inclusion of women's voices and perspectives in this process. When the guns are silenced and the dust settles, the UAE will be by Sudan's side as it has been for decades. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for their statement.